Hi, I'm Rebecca Flaherty and welcome back. In today's tutorial, we're going to be using the Motif template from my pattern maker canvas, Easy Peasy Templates Set, to make another floral pattern in Procreate. This set is designed to make pattern spacing super easy. You don't have to worry about placement because the templates are all color coded and all the spacing is worked out for you. Each motif is repeated twice in the diamond repeat, which is what helps your pattern look natural and balanced. If you've not seen the first video in this series, then I recommend starting there for a complete introduction. In this video, we're going to be working with 4 different flower shapes, as I said. You can use the free floral stamp brushes I've created to trace over, or just draw your own versions. Either way, it's a really fun, low pressure way to start making repeat patterns. So let's start by bringing in our template. Start in the gallery screen as always, and we're going to go to Import. And I'm going to use the 12-inch file here, but if you've got a smaller iPad and a lower layer limit, you can use the 8-inch set there. So I'm going to use this one. You can see the template loads there and it's got that lovely texture on it. What we can do now is go into the sketch folder, tap on this spare diamond at the bottom there, then we go to our canvas actions, insert a file, and we can bring in the template to use now. So we're going to go for the 4 motifs. The first video in this series was using the 3 motifs. So if you're jumping in later in the series, I recommend going and starting with that one, as the video for that one has a lot more background info and the why as well as the how. So I'm going to bring in this one. And you can see that's got various size circles for adding all the different motifs, having a nice spacing, evenly spaced arrangement of your motifs, and they're color coded. So if you wanted to, say for example you were doing a pattern of like children's toys, you could have a teddy bear in this one and this one, a football in that one, a jump rope in that one, and I'm really bad at thinking of toys, a train set or something in that one. And they'd all be nicely evenly spaced. You don't have to just stick to doing flowers and having them the same colour. You could use these colour coding for different types of motifs. Once you've got that in there, we can then tap on the drawer here first and we can start adding in some motifs. These can be freehand or you can use stamp brushes. I'm just going to use these simple flower shapes here. You can find those free over on my website. And I'm going to use this dark blue and just start stamping that into these. What size do we have? So I'll start with the smaller flowers, as the brush is the right size for those. And I'm just going to put one of those into each of these dark green circles there, like that. Then I'm going to make the brush a bit bigger and put a larger one inside these larger circles. And it's just the coloured circles we need to do, not the grey ones. Then I'll make it smaller again and just fill in these purple circles there. I've just spotted that when I was making this template, these smaller ones aren't repeated around the edge, so I will fix that for the template that I put in the shop, so you'll have these ones filling these spots as well. So your template will have these smaller circles around the outside, so ignore that on mine for now. And now we're ready to fill in these gaps around the outside. So I'm going to pinch and merge this down with the sketch diamond. Then we can duplicate this, turn snapping and magnetics on, and snap this over to that side there. You can see these ones here don't have circles under them in this image here, but yours will. So duplicate the bottom one again, snap it up into this corner. You can see all of these areas are being filled. Then snap it over into this corner there. Duplicate the bottom one again. And then snap it down into that corner. And now we've got this nicely filled out template. So pinch the top 4 layers together, tap on them and invert the colour. And then when we're tracing over this, you'll know it's just the dark flowers you need to trace over, not these orange ones. So once you're at this stage, we're ready to start working in the pattern folder. So let's turn on the pattern group. This is there so that you can easily add layers above it. And I'm going to tap and get a white to start drawing the shapes with. I'm going to use the same construction method as we did in the first video, where we draw the shapes in just white or grey or any placeholder colour, and then we're going to add colours over the top in layers so that we can then add shading to the whole thing without having to have quite so many layers, and it all remains nice and editable. So let's grab the Mercury brush, which you can find in the Procreate default inking set, I think, and I'm just going to use white, and we'll start just by drawing the middles for these flowers. Then we can fill all of those in. Then I'll add a layer underneath, and this is why we've got that bottom pattern on there, so you can always add layers underneath easily. And I'm just going to use a new colour, a grey, and I'm going to trace over the petals now. And as I said, all of the techniques that we use in this are all ones that I've covered in the first video, where we made a pattern with 3 motifs. So if any of you're wondering why are you doing that for any of this, then I recommend going and starting with that video first. But do also feel free to ask me any questions you have in the comments. Then we can add another layer and start to draw the next set of smaller flowers. So just draw the middles for these first. I always find it really soothing and relaxing drawing over templates like this. A nice bit of calm tracing at the end of the day is just what the doctor ordered sometimes. Then we'll add a layer underneath that. Just grab the white again, and we'll draw in these petals. Then we just need to do 2 more layers for the flowers down here. Why trace instead of stamping? 2 reasons. Resizing or rotating a stamp lowers image quality, and tracing lets us choose the brush we want. Those tiny variations and wobbles in each line give you a pattern, a real hand-drawn human touch. There we go, that's all of the motifs in place, and now we just get to add some colour over the top of these. Turn the pattern marker off for now. And I think I'm going to start with the top layer, so we'll add a layer above, make it a clipping mask, and I'm just going to fill it with this yellow colour. So that's the first colouring done. I'm going to group those together. Then we'll do the big flowers next, so add a layer above and clip it down. And I'm going to use the colour codes to help me colour these in. So let's grab the colour fill brush on this one, and I'll do these 2 ones in the blue circle, the same colour. I am going to use blue, but if you want to use a different colour, so you don't have to use the same colour that's on those circles every time. I'll switch to turquoise next, add a layer in between the one that I've already done and those grey flowers, and that will automatically get clipped in there. And I'll use that to do, what's the other one, down there. Then add another layer in between. Use light pink for this one up here, and that one there, the 2 in the pink circles, and then orange for these 2 remaining ones. And then let's group all those together. Next we've got these middle ones, which I think I'll also do yellow. It's because I'm keeping those the same colour. I could have done all that on different layers, but I think it's nice to have the flexibility of being able to make those 2 a slightly different colour if I wanted to, so I will keep them on separate layers. Then we've got petals that go with those, so let's add a layer above, make it a clipping mask, and I'm going to use a mix of colours for these. So we'll grab the colour changer brush, and I'm going to set my primary colour as this turquoise and the secondary colour as that blue, and I'm just going to scribble over each one like this so that they're all a different colour. If you end up with 2 flowers kind of similar colours next to each other, you can keep scribbling over this until you end up with a slightly different colour if you want. Just use these colours for the medium-sized flowers. Then we can group those together, and then it's just these mini flowers. So I'll add a layer over the petals, make it a clipping mask, and I'm going to use red and orange for these ones. Actually, maybe I'll use the mustard yellow and the red for these. Maybe I'll use the brighter yellow. I think that mustard feels a bit too like dark and dirty. There you go, and I love how you can just get really pretty colours with these. Just be careful not to kind of accidentally colour onto another one, and also make sure that you go over the whole thing, because you won't be able to get that colour back again. So make sure you go over the whole one and that you don't spill onto a flower next to it. Let's group those, and then it's just the middles now. So we'll add a layer, make it a clipping mask, and let's just fill this with the yellow as well. Then we can group those together. If you find, like here, you've got some where you've essentially got the same colour on the top and bottom, what you can do is go back onto this layer, make sure we've got that bright yellow, and just colour over it with something else. I think the others are okay. Maybe this one could do with being slightly darker. There we go. So now we can do the shading on these. And I'm going to use the same technique that we used for the first video in this series, and we'll start with the big ones so it's easy to see. So we're going to start with these. I'm going to add a layer above the top colour, make it a clipping mask, change the blend mode to colour burn and 40 to 50%. Colour, I'm going to double tap here to get a 50% grey, and I'm going to use a soft airbrush to just add some darker colour over the tops of these, and that way whatever colour we fill this in, that shading will still match. That's why I like to use this method. So I'm going to go and do that on all of these now. Then we can add in between these another layer, make this one colour dodge, so this will be going lighter, and I'm going to make the blend mode 40%, sorry, the opacity 40%, and then just use that same dark grey, maybe I'll bring the opacity of this down, to add a touch of lighter to the tops of those. So if I zoom in on this one, you can see, I'll hide these, so we've got darker on the bottom and then this lighter up there. So I've done that on all of them. And next we can do the petals, and this is where it comes in handy to use this, because we don't have to do separate one for each layer. We can just use one layer of shading and clip it over all of these, because ultimately they're all clipped down onto the shapes there. So let's make this colour burn 40. And I'm just going to make it a little darker in the middle there. Then we'll add another layer, make this one colour dodge 40, and I'm going to use this to add some lighter to the tops of the petals there. And then I'm going to go around and do that on all of these flowers, and also repeat those steps on each one of the different size groups of flowers too. So that's what it looks like before the shading, and that's what it looks like with all the shading added in. So now we can change the background colour to our final colour, which is this dark blue, and that really starts to pop now. 2 jobs left to do on this, and I'm going to add a bit of highlighting with a white. So double tap here, and I'm going to use the Pandani brush and just add a little bit of shading to some of these flowers like that. It's not really shading, it's highlighting, I guess. Just a nice little extra detail to really make this pop. There we go. And last job is to add a layer above that, and I'm going to grab the bokeh filler, and I'm going to make the primary colour this dark blue, the secondary colour white, and I'm just going to add some little dots to fill in the spaces down here. And with this one, make sure you don't go past the edges, and then that way the edges of the diamond, sorry, and then you won't end up with any overlapping bits. There we go, and now we're ready to build out this pattern tile. So to do that, there's two ways of doing this. You could duplicate and then tap and flatten, making sure that you've got your pattern marker hidden. Or if you're short on layers, hide your textures, hide the background color and your sketch, swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, you can turn those back on again, hide your layers, tap up here, swipe down and paste. And that's going to do the same thing as duplicating and flattening, but it isn't going to require 15 to 20 layers for you to do that. So let's grab this colour fill brush and we're going to put a mark on the corners like that. Then we're going to duplicate this, tap transform, and we're going to snap it down into the corners just like we did when we were building out the sketch. Making sure that you've got those orange lines crossing there. Then we can pinch to merge those top 4 layers together, grab your eraser, rub out those bits in the middle, and then on the bottom corners, and then you can pinch and merge that all onto one layer. Now we can test the pattern is working in repeat. So let's swipe down again with 3 fingers and copy all, tap up the top here, swipe down again and paste. I'm going to add a layer underneath and fill it with a colour that contrasts with the background and the motif, so white will do for this. Then we're going to transform this layer and snap it into the middle here until that says 1800 pixels. Then duplicate, tap transform, snap it over to the edge there. Zoom in and make sure that your motifs all line up and that you've got no white gap there. And you can pinch those together, duplicate, drag it down to the bottom, and again just check this seam doesn't have any white gap in it, and you're good to go. And that's how this pattern is looking in repeat. If you'd like to make your own version of this pattern, head over to my Etsy shop for the Pattern Maker canvas and the templates, and be sure to grab the free floral stamp brushes from the Pattern Maker's Toolkit. The Pattern Maker's Toolkit is kind of like a free Patreon. You'll get a monthly email with creative prompts, seasonal colour palettes, early access to some of my YouTube videos, 10% off in my Etsy store, and a full library of free pattern making resources. It's just 1 email a month, no spam, and just goodies to help you stay creative. If you like making patterns this way in Procreate, then keep an eye out for my upcoming Skillshare class, where I'll show you how I take the finished patterns into Affinity Photo to automate building and editing the tile, and will apply them to print-on-demand assets and archive everything neatly on your computer. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you soon.